It was a hot July morning in London. Steve Dryden was squeezed onto an overcrowded train on his way to work when the bombs went off. 4 explosions tore through London's transportation network after 4 suicide bombers linked to Al-Qaeda boarded trains and buses during rush hour, blowing themselves up and killing 52 commuters. London had never experienced a terrorist attack this deadly before. One of the bombs exploded on a train directly behind the one Steve Dryden was on. He had no idea what had happened until he turned on the news at his office.
We were getting most of our information from Sky News, bizarrely. They seemed to be right on top of it.
Steve worked out of the 14th floor of New Scotland Yard, the offices of London's Metropolitan Police's anti-terrorist branch. But on the 7th of July 2005, they were blindsided.
It was our 9/11 moment. Everything changed from then onwards, and we realised who we were dealing with.
Steve was a senior officer on the team, and he led the Met's painstaking investigation into the 7/7 bombings. Almost 12 months later, Steve and his team discovered a UK-born Al-Qaeda operative in Pakistan had devised the plot. A year after the 7/7 tube and bus bombings, they sensed something bigger was coming.
Everyone was on high alert come 2006. We were ready to pounce on anything that had the potential to cause mass casualties again.
Soon, a plot much more lethal and destructive than 7/7 arrived. It would be an Al-Qaeda attack to rival 9/11, unless the Met could stop it before it was too late. This is Countered Terrorism, an Audible original. My name is David Harewood. As an actor, I've played several intelligence and counterterrorism chiefs, and I've become fascinated by how this stuff actually works. In this 6-part Audible series, I'm looking at the incredible stories behind the world's most dangerous, disrupted terror plots, and through them, exploring the reality of counterterrorism work. First, the liquid bomb plot. The liquid bomb plot was the deadliest Al-Qaeda plot the UK had ever faced. The plot was stopped, but we're still experiencing its effects today. If it had succeeded, 7 transatlantic airliners would have rained down from the sky, along with thousands of passengers.
We came very, very, very close to complete disaster in 2006. For a number of years, I was an analyst with the CIA. I am the author of Disruption, inside the largest counterterrorism investigation in history.
Aki spent years researching this plot. He interviewed MI5, Met, and CIA officers, and he's become the authority on this all but forgotten case.
It would have changed our world, changed our economies, and almost nobody remembers it.
It was late June 2006 when Steve heard about the potential plot for the first time.
Can't remember who it was, but he came up to me and said, "There's a briefing on the 15th floor. Can you attend now?"
Steve headed into the meeting.
There were about 20 to 25 people in there. Quite a few members of MI5 who always just give their first names, which is fun.
A senior investigative officer stood at the front of the briefing room and laid out intelligence the Met had learned from MI5 about an emerging threat.
Which didn't seem a lot at the time. He said, "We've got a plot, we don't know what they're going to do, but we think they're going to do something serious." The main man was Abdullah Ahmed Ali. What raised the suspicion was intelligence that whilst in Pakistan, Ali had met with Rashid Rauf. He was the man who organised and supported 7/7.
Abdullah Ahmed Ali was 25 and a British citizen living in East London. As a teenager, Ali became politically active. He felt Muslims were being oppressed all over the world. Around the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan by the United States, he became a supporter of the anti-war coalition. At the time of the 2003 US-led invasion of Iraq, Ali traveled to refugee camps on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border to deliver supplies.
And he saw terrible things, and it affected him greatly.
Ali's political views became more radical. Delivering aid wasn't enough. He wanted to strike back.
He connected with Al-Qaeda, and at one point he actually wanted to fight in Afghanistan against the coalition.
the coalition of Western countries that invaded Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11, including Ali's own country, the UK.
He was turned around by a very interesting fellow named Rashid Rauf, who said, "You are more useful back home in London for an unspecified operation."
Rauf was the same age as Ali. He fled the UK to Pakistan after he became the prime suspect in his uncle's stabbing. He joined Al-Qaeda and rose through its ranks, eventually plotting the 7/7 attacks and trying to convince Ali that he could make an impact by fighting in the UK.
And that's what he did.
When Ali returned to London from Pakistan in 2006, the contents of his suitcase caught the attention of agents.
They did a covert search of his luggage as he came through the airport. What they found was interesting, a quantity of AA batteries.
Now, obviously, there's no battery shortage in London. So why on earth is this guy who has this connection to a terrorist leader bringing back this strange stuff?
On a previous trip back from Pakistan, they'd found more strange items in his luggage.
There were bags of Tang.
The space-age just-add-water powdered juice, popular in the 90s.
All of these pieces of data suggested that he's probably up to no good, and so they just had to watch him.
MI5 agents asked the Met to start a 24/7 surveillance operation against Ali to stop what they feared could be the next 7/7. A couple of weeks later, surveillance officers set themselves up outside Ali's home in East London, where he lived with his wife and baby boy.
It is a nice working class area. There's a lot of people who come from South Asia, but also other people from all over the world.
The officers watched Ali's every step. Each second of his day would have to be accounted for.
2 surveillance teams working 13-hour days, regardless of whether he was out and about or not.
Monitoring a target is a delicate dance. If Ali was walking down the street, 2 officers on foot would be behind him.
They would be on the opposite pavement, walking in the same direction as him, one in front, one behind. If he crossed the road, the one in front would continue and just be lost in the distance, and then one behind would take over. If he goes into a shop, they'd deploy another one.
A dozen officers constantly swap positions, circling their target like a pack of predators. Officers drop in and out, so Ali would never see the same faces.
You're not watching someone waiting for him to commit a crime. You're watching him to see how he conducts his daily life. What time does he get up? Where does he go? Who does he talk to?
On the second day of surveillance, the team spotted someone who raised suspicion. Officers followed Ali as he parked outside a house that belonged to Tanvir Hussain. The two had been friends for years, having worked with the same Islamic aid charity. Officers saw Hussain and Ali buy a screwdriver, WD-40, and other inconspicuous items from B&Q, a DIY store. But when Steve's team gathered more intelligence on Tanvir Hussain, something didn't sit right.
He had lived quite a westernized lifestyle, drugs, girls, all that sort of thing. And then, like flicking a switch, he then became a very devout Muslim. Think, why has this happened? Is there radicalization involved?
Surveillance officers started hanging on Hussain's every move.
The first couple of weeks, it was just them occasionally meeting. There was no pattern to it.
On the 13th of July, Ali and Hussain drove to Tesco, where they were seen hanging around one specific section, the soft drinks.
Ali was paying attention to shelves of half-litre plastic containers, in particular Oasis.
Ali wasn't interested in the flavour. He was fixated on the bottles.
He was picking them up, checking the seal on top, and looking at the bottom of the bottle. That was odd.
On the 15th of July, Ali drove to Lloyd Park in Walthamstow to meet Asad Sarwar. Sarwar had volunteered with the same Islamic aid charity as Ali. During this meeting, he and Ali were seen doing something very suspicious.
The two of them lay on the grass next to a bank, both facing down with their heads together, about 6 inches away from the ground, obviously talking to each other but not looking at each other, and they were talking into the ground. That is classic anti-surveillance activity to make sure that they could not be overheard.
Sarwar was immediately added to the surveillance roster. Suspect number 3.
Sarwar was buying large amounts of hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide can be used for only one thing really outside the hairdressing industry and medicine, and that's to make explosives.
This was the first indication that Ali was plotting a bombing. Police still had no idea what Ali was targeting, or that the scope of his plot was much bigger than 7/7.
We didn't even try to put it together because it's like putting together a jigsaw and you've just got the outside pieces. You don't know what the picture is.
On the 21st of July, 6 days after Ali met Sarwar, the authorities made a breakthrough. That evening, Ali and Hussain were followed as they walked around Walthamstow.
There was a young MI5 officer who will remain nameless, who was surveilling them at the time.
He saw Ali and Hussain go inside an abandoned-looking terraced house, the first time the targets had been seen at this address.
He looked up into the second floor window and he saw Ali just looking out on the street. And that's why they said, this is an important property. Because why is he there? Because he's not connected to it. And yet, how does he have the key?
The surveillance team kept track of the comings and goings, and new faces kept showing up.
The police kept seeing Ali walk in with a stranger, lock the door, draw the curtains, and they would just be in there for 2 hours. And they would come out, and then they would part ways.
There were now over 100 surveillance officers following Al-Qaeda-linked suspects around London, who were congregating inside this mysterious house.
And so the security services decided to engage in a pretty risky maneuver, basically a covert entry, and they call it a creep.
MI5 deployed a specialist team to install surveillance equipment inside the house.
Police and MI5 knew that Ali did not live there. He lived at home with his wife, and so in the dead of night, they got into the facility.
They spread out silently across the dark, empty house.
They put in audio probes, they put in the cameras, and they went back down the same way they came and vanished into the night.
The next day, sound and video from inside the house poured in through the headphones and screens of officers back at Scotland Yard.
You know what? It's quite a big kitchen, yeah.
Bring all the bottles and all the batteries and everything, and the pan. Bring everything. Let me go to the toilet and then I'll help you.
Ali and Hussain were seen and heard discussing mixing a mysterious compound using tang.
You know the tang, yeah? It's been dissolved. Can you see those little rings in there?
What's that?
This one is the difference, but it's not so much. You can see it through, innit? The tang is dissolved properly and it doesn't make it misty anymore. That's good.
Are you sure?
That's boom, mate.
It was clear the men were building a device assumed to be a bomb.
The cameras weren't brilliant. Couldn't see a lot. Sometimes just the back of one of them sitting at a table doing something. Couldn't make it out. But interesting conversations were heard.
On the 31st of July, Ali and Tanvir were heard counting everyone on their team.
1, 2,
Adam,
Ivo,
Arrow,
Omar B.
Wahid,
So 7.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's 15. Then there's another 3 units.
There's another 3 units, 3 groups.
18. Think of it. Yeah, alright. 1 man more.
What they said really terrified the listeners. They were talking about 18 bombers, and the police only knew about a dozen people. And so this became this national emergency very, very quickly.
There was another reason the number Ali and Hussain counted was significant. They were looking for one more bomber.
That was interesting to us because there were 19 people involved in 9/11 and they were trying to emulate that.
The 7/7 plot needed only 4 bombers to cause carnage. How much damage could 19 attackers wreak on London? Listen now, only on Audible.